Okay, so as I was talking about yesterday in the video, Larry Hoover's court date happened. The judge was viewing him via screen in the federal building at the courthouse, and Larry Hoover was in prison in a tan suit, and he was speaking to the judge from prison via video conference. So I'm going to tell you guys what he said, and I'm also going to tell you what the judge said. So Larry Hoover was given a chance to talk, and he said, quote, here I'm quoting word for word, he said, "I am a completely different person from the man that entered prison in 1997. He said, quote, "I have had a chance to reflect on my life and the troubles that my existence has caused in the community. If released, I would take the time to try to redeem myself for some of the trouble that I've caused the community." So that was what he said to the judge. Okay, now the judge asked a very, I'll say, a question that caused a lot of tension to Larry Hoover's lawyer. He said, how many murders is he responsible for? So the lawyer was a bit like taken aback by this question, and she said that she needed time to speak to her client. So she came back and she said to the judge, she's like basically insinuating he's not responsible for all the murders that the GDs have committed. Okay, and she said that she was going to need some time to give him some type of a number. So he gave her until October 7th to come up with some figure of bodies that Larry Hoover is directly responsible for. So this is a very interesting and strange turn of events. He basically just wants to know how many bodies Larry Hoover's got. As far as like personally killing people, possibly. I don't know of anybody that Larry Hoover personally killed. But I've never heard of that happening, actually. And how many murders he's ordered. And so she was basically saying, like, you can't hold him responsible for stuff that the GDs have done, apart from his orders. And he wants to know, how many murders Larry Hoover is directly responsible for. So he gave her until October 7th to come up with that. The prosecution was making the argument that Larry Hoover is still, in some way or shape or form in control of the gang and running things from the Supermax prison. And the judge didn't buy it. He said the same thing that a lot of you guys have been saying in the comment section, which is that it's practically impossible that he could be running the gang from a Supermax prison. So he rejected the prosecution's argument. And that's a good sign for Larry Hoover and his team. Okay, because that's the crux of the prosecution's whole argument, which is that he's still continuing his criminal activities. And the judge said no. The judge said, like, that's just impossible to believe that he could be doing that under 24-hour surveillance in a concrete cell the size of a parking space where he doesn't get contact with anybody. He's like, that's just, he can't believe it, the judge. So that's a good sign. Okay, now, obviously the bad sign is that he asked the lawyer how many bodies Larry Hoover basically has. I mean, he didn't use that term, but he's saying how many murders is he responsible for. So this is going to be a very difficult question for her to answer, okay, because if she says, well, the only body that he's responsible for is the one that he ordered, the one that he was convicted for with the state, okay, that might make it seem to the judge like, she's trying to play him and trying to, basically lie. Okay, she's trying to basically like make it seem like Hoover's not doing anything, and that as the leader of the GDs, he just wasn't aware of any of the murders that were going on and wasn't ordering any of them, and he was just, sitting back while the other guys did their thing. And, that might make it seem, like I said to the judge, like she's trying to finesse him. Okay, but if she gives him a high number, okay, well, that might not give the judge the impression that she's trying to finesse him, but that might give the judge the impression that, okay, well, this guy's just too dangerous to have back out on the street if basically he's responsible for that much bloodshed directly. So this is going to be a very difficult answer for her to give. It's really like there is no right answer. Okay, and as the leader of a gang like the GDs, this is a little different than the mafia, or a cartel, but especially the mafia. And a lot of these laws, guys, that were, implemented by the federal government to deal with organized crime were basically specifically designed for Italian organized crime, and they're kind of tailor-made for that type of criminal organization, and they really don't fit the structure of black gangs, even when they had structure. Because a lot of these murders that were going on the street were not ordered or even known about by Larry Hoover. And that's actually true. With the mafia, with the Italian mafia, before you wanted to whack anybody, you had to get that approved by, the boss. If the boss didn't approve it, you couldn't just whack somebody. You did that and, you might be whacked or, made to turn yourself in or something like that. It's like you couldn't just do that. So any murders that, the mafia did could be directly attributable to the higher ups, okay, and those bodies could be put directly on them. That's not the case with most of the black gangs in Chicago. Like I said, two guys might just see each other on the street, two ops, they just start blowing, or one guy has beef with another guy because they like the same girl or something, and he goes and whacks him, and there's not going to be any repercussion from the GD organization over that. That's just like part of being in the streets. In Chicago back in the 90s, especially in the black community, you would just see a lot of random violence that would not be approved by a guy like Hoover. It would just happen. Guys would go to guys' neighborhoods to tag them up. They'd start blowing. They'd blow back. There might be some repercussion. Okay. I've heard of stuff like that happening, like some repercussion, but is the guy going to say, you didn't get this approved? You had to get our permission to go tag their neighborhood up, and then if he wanted to blow, you blew back, you put yourself in a position now where you got to bring heat on us from the police. And that whole process was not there, at least not what I saw. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section, especially you guys who grew up in the 80s and 90s like I did when the GDs were kind of at their peak. But I never really saw that, that nuanced and that intricate of a process behind the violence that was going on. I saw a lot of teenagers and even younger than teenagers is doing stuff that the bosses had no idea they were even doing. So you guys let me know what you think, though, but this is going to be a very difficult answer for his lawyer to give. And I don't know what answer she should give. I don't even know how she would come up with an answer for that. Okay, maybe look at the number, ask him honestly, how many murders did you directly order? I don't know how high that number would actually be. Because he just seemed to kind of just put out these general overarching principles once he was locked up. When he was on the street, okay, yeah, that's different. But he wasn't really on the street for that long. He wasn't. I mean, he was locked up as a youth and has been in prison almost for the majority of his life. He's been in prison or jail. So, and like I said, from jail, he would just kind of put out these general rules, but he wouldn't, as far as I know, be ordering, this guy has to be whacked, push a button on this guy. I didn't really hear of that type of thing going on, but you guys let me know what you think, though, in the comment section, man. This is a very weird turn of events and a very interesting case, and it'll be interesting to see what happens on October 7th when the next update will come. Larry Hoover's son and was in the courtroom, and the courtroom was full of his supporters. So, yeah, very emotional situation. And you guys, I'd be interested to get your opinions on this. This is your boy, Chicago News. I'm out.